Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Microsoft Unboxed Pod. I'm your host today, Kareem Anderson. I'm joined by.
David Allen. Hope everybody's doing well out there. We're halfway through, well, a little over halfway through March. So springtime's in the air about everywhere. I think yesterday was the first day of spring.
22nd, isn't it normally? I could be wrong. Maybe it's tomorrow. I don't know.
Okay,
It's
maybe I'm a
spring.
day off.
You might be right. Spring in the relative next 72 hours. Somebody figure it out. We're sitting in front of computers. It'd be easy to check, but who wants to do that, right? We are
What we
going
have AI for.
I know. Well, we focused our AI. We are going to be talking about some topics, some Microsoft topics as usual. This week we got for everybody. Actually, starting off with an iPhone rumor about it not having the external ports. Now, I know we've been talking about this for the past 10 years, but I think they've inched even closer to it. We'll get into the history of the evolution of the technology that's led us to believing that this could be happening in the next version of the iPhone. We'll also be talking about Microsoft expanding its feature sets for Notepad, Paint, and Snipping Tool. And they're testing it out with insiders currently. So if you haven't checked it out, check your Windows Insider uh, channel that you're on. Maybe I think you need to move over to beta or dev in order to start accessing this. We're also going to be talking about some of the games you can play this weekend as part of Xbox Free Play Days. We'll be discussing the EU calling out Apple and Google for their half-hearted measures to comply with the Digital Markets Act that I think they enacted last year. Apparently, these companies have dragging their feet as far as making things less anti-competitive. We'll also be talking about a teaser or a leak that we saw about Microsoft potentially coming to terms with Steam being the go-to destination for PC gamers, and figuring out a way to accommodate that. We'll be talking about Gemini because they've added two new features which kind of leave Copilot in the dust, depending on what your use case is. And then lastly, we'll be talking about Microsoft teaming up with Elon Musk, BlackRock, and MGX for a $30 billion data center, and what that could mean as far as the company's strategic positioning for AI, partnering with a rival of one of its biggest investments. OpenAI, and the CEO of OpenAI is not shy about his dislike and disdain for Elon Musk. But here's Microsoft straddling the fence for both. With that being said, I'm going to stop rambling and let my partner jump us into our first story, which is about the iPhone.
Well, this one is an interesting one, folks. Like you said, I know we're a Microsoft podcast, but when I saw this story about the potential iPhone 17 Air, it really caught my attention. One, it's supposed to be a razor thin phone. But two, what really perked my interest was rumors keep boiling that it's going to be a phone with no ports. Now, when I first read that, I went, no way. Because I come from the time of the Palm Trio and some of the original Windows-based phones where if the thing locked up or the thing had an issue, you had to take the battery pack off and unplug it and plug your battery back in, reboot your phone, and go again. Then I thought about it a minute, and I said, Apple has always done things differently. They were late to
You
the
bought into
party.
the marketing hype.
Yeah, they've always done things differently, for better or worse. In this way, I think it's a little worse. If you remember, they were late to the USB-C party, and the only reason they really had their hands forced was the EU rule that they were going with a USB-C standard, if you remember. So they kind of give us I believe it's a half-baked USB-C port on the iPhone. I think it's like, what, 5 gig, 10 gig maybe? I don't think
Yes,
it's,
definitely a subpar experience.
yeah, it's not a fully fledged USB-C port. So that was Apple's way of, getting by that. So now they say we can go portless because we have MagSafe, and it allows them to make the phone thinner, and it allows them to make the phone lighter. But there is a but. It also somewhat forces you into the iCloud ecosystem, because that would be your way of transferring your data to and from your iPhone and between your Apple devices. Now, me, I don't plug a phone in very often for data. Now, as quick as I say that, we had some bad storms here last weekend. I was a Samsung DeX user for a couple hours, so that was an exception, but that was probably the only time I've done it in the past 5 years. So I question, I'm thinking of user comfort here. We get in our automobiles. What do? We reach for the cord, we plug it in, we toss our phone somewhere. We plug it into a port. We go to bed at night, we plug it in, we toss it on the nightstand, we go to sleep. MagSafe may require that extra few seconds to make sure it's plugged in, to make sure it's secure. How do we feel about going from, we've always had a charging cord with these devices, we've always had a wireless option. How do we feel about no more cords necessarily? Now, I know there's a expense here that nobody's going to like, because it kind of gets your house in a place of, if you've got a USB-C cord for a laptop, it'll charge an iPhone. If you've got a cord for an iPhone, sometimes it'll charge a laptop. So we're going from a standard to Apple maybe trying to create another standard, and we're going to have two cords for a while, the MagSafe and the USB-Cs in the house. How do we feel about that?
This is going to be met with a lot of derision. Now, I'm assuming, if I had to take a wild stab at this, if this were to happen, because again, like I mentioned at the top, we've been talking about this for 10 years. But if this were to happen, this would be on one model, and I believe it'd probably be the iPhone Pro Max or something like that, if they were to create something like that. Or maybe, to your point, the iPhone 17 Air is just a specialized phone that, all the 17 models still come with the port. And here's the 17 Air model that stands out, will be probably more expensive for a number of reasons, for different features, different camera sets, whatnot. And that'll be the option that they give people, is instead of saying, hey, you have an option of port or MagSafe on a single phone and your single purchase, now your decision will be the purchase itself. Will you go all in on this one device and just jump the shark, or will you stick to what we have currently because we don't want to disrupt that? I say that it's going to be a much harder sell for people to make this transition, more so than the 30 pin, because the 30 pin was the connecting, to your point, is a behavior. It's how we behave with the phone, knowing that we can plug it into our car, plug it into certain aspects. When you go traveling, you don't need to necessarily bring a MagSafe pocket thing or whatever. You bring your cord and its a little power pack. You can plug it in anywhere. You go to someone's house, they might have one, or you could plug it into their wall socket and put it anywhere. You can put it on the floor, you can put it on the table, you can put it on the couch. With MagSafe, even though it's magnetic, you still need a flat surface for this thing to charge, essentially. It doesn't slip off or fall anywhere. I don't think people are going to want to rely on having to place their phone on that. And in addition, here's the biggest thing. We are addicted to using our phones. And unfortunately, we use our phones while charging, which slows it down. Nonetheless, we still want to do that. You can't do that with MagSafe. Not conveniently. Not as convenient as you can with the phone. So these people who are going to buy the iPhone 17 Air will be these people who are ready to make that transition, go through those painstaking things. But I mean, like I said, you can't really use it when it's connected to something and it's charging.
Well, you're exactly right, which brings up two more points. That one, unless Apple changes something, MagSafe is not as fast as the USB-C fast charging that we see now. So getting that quick boost on your phone on the way to work or on the way to an event, where you might need to use your camera, for example, that takes more power, is not going to happen. And the other thing that I've even encountered here in my own home office, USB-C cables break it happens. We bend the end on them, where we use them and they're flexible. And what do? You just go grab another USB-C cable, even if it's the one off the laptop, until you can get another one from Amazon or your favorite outlet. Well, when your MagSafe charger quits, people are going to be upset because most people, well, I've got my iPhone, I've got my charger. They don't think about the day that MagSafe charger doesn't work. And it's 8 hours before they can get a new charger, or, even longer. The boss can't get a hold of you. The family can't get a hold of you. You can't text. You can't, social media. People will, that'll be a barrier for a lot of people. And unfortunately, it'll take that some people will have to go through these barriers. But I think the industry itself can get there, but I don't see it happening.
I want to know
in the next 2 or 3 years.
More immediately, what happens to CarPlay? I don't know. Do they have a wireless version of CarPlay that works? That isn't? I mean, is that going to be done over Bluetooth now?
I don't think so, but that's a good point. I always thought CarPlay you had to plug the iPhone into the head unit in your.
You do vehicle. For Android Auto, I believe, and I think it's partly because of the touch interactions of this, not necessarily the information being broadcast. Because I don't know. I want it because again, the car doesn't have Wi-Fi. Most cars don't. You might be able to get like a Tesla if you are still in the market for one of those, or Rivian or something like that. But I want to know how these things will work, because you can charge it on the charging pads that are built into cars. But how does CarPlay work if you're going to be using maps or music or text text to speech? So they have, hey, we won't believe this anymore because this is not an Apple podcast, but they've got, while they have built the technology and they've been evolving slowly towards it, there's still many more questions as far as practicality that need to be answered before they introduce this phone. And I don't think they're anywhere near answering some of these basic ones that we just brought up in the last 12 minutes. So again, who knows if they come out with these solutions. This will be a very long event to have to explain the iPhone 17 Air versus, hey, we adjusted the cameras on the iPhone 17 as well, and we made it thinner and different colors. Like, imagine having that whole regular Apple section, which takes 40 minutes to an hour, and then another hour, essentially half an hour, to explain what this new phone is and what answer this portless one solves. But I don't rule it out of the realm of possibility. We will see.
Not with Apple, no, because they tend to throw darts at a dartboard sometimes. Sometimes it sticks, and the industry does something different. But sometimes they do things like this, and
sometimes it doesn't stick. And
we go, no, not yet.
Yeah. The next topic we got is Microsoft expanding its Notepad, Paint, and Snipping Tool features. This is for insiders. They seem to have been, really on this idea of fixing at least these 3 inbox apps. Who knows if they're going to get around to making photos more usable. Don't get me wrong, photos is nice, but it takes a while to load. It doesn't sync very well, or at least not effortlessly. This is kind of a manual process. Some of the features could be updated. I tend to use Google Photos pinned to my taskbar as my photo viewing app because it has a lot more features. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Paint, Notepad, and Snipping Tool. So if you use those, you can be looking forward to, and again, I believe this is with which version of Windows, which build of Windows are we on this one? This is for the dev and Canary channels for the latest update. So if you're in either one of those, rush over. If you're in beta, switch over to that. And what you get basically is you get summarizing with Notepad. It's a feature that can summarize selected text via 3 modes. With the right click, you can choose summarize. You can choose summarize from Copilot, or you can just use the keyboard commands of Control and M, and it'll help summarize what's on the text box itself. You can it also offers a variety of summaries to choose from. Feature requires you to sign into a Microsoft account, unfortunately. So if you are Microsoft accountless, this might be the time to get one. And it's for, I think it also uses AI credits from your Microsoft 365 consumer or Copilot subscription. So just similar to the way that they use credits in generating artwork for the text to art, text to image thing in Paint. You'll have to probably do that as well. I don't know how many credits you get for it or how many it takes up. Snipping Tool just got a draw and hold set ability added to it. The default screen capture app, Windows 11, basically lets you draw lines and shapes using the ballpoint pen tool, and then pause and hold to convert your freehand lines into straight lines. So I think this is something that kind of happens in OneNote, I believe. If you draw kind of an inaccurate arrow line, you can straighten it or you can leave it as you want to, but basically just cleans up some of your circles, lines, and squares and things like that if you're doing some quick jotting on whatever image. And there's also a protocol launch in Snipping Tool that now supports a new improved protocol, which should allow for better utilization of these set features. It opens up Snipping Tool much quicker. You can, I think it's supposed to allow for more features in the future to be added to this thing without weighing it down. So again, what are your thoughts on them, focusing on these three particular apps in the Microsoft Inbox app experience?
Well, one, it's, as you mentioned, the generative credits there. That's a way to get people to use it to recoup some of these investments we talk about from week to week. The more features you put in for AI, such as you said, manipulating a photo, straightening a line, for example, those are credits. People are going to pay for that. How many people are going to pay for that? I'm not sure, but people are going to pay for it. It is a revenue stream to pay back the investors for Copilot. Two, I've always wondered why Microsoft did not focus on these apps in the first place. Paint went how many decades without, major changes. Snipping Tool, is a little more of a current tool, but it has been kind of static over the last 6 months or so. So it took us a year to get recording of screen, and then it took us another few months to get audio added to that, where you could capture the audio with the screen. So at least they're listening. But I think this is more, okay, we're tightening up the in-house ship. Let's get AI baked into something else. Let's get us another revenue stream. Because I'm going to be honest, I'm not a Paint user. I don't know when the last time I opened up Paint is. Most of us don't think of Paint, when it comes to editing images, because it stayed Windows 3.1.1 Paint for 15 years. So we moved on to things like GIMP, which is free, or, for paid solutions. We moved on to the Photoshops, or the Photoshop elements. We all had that $50 CD sitting in our CD stack somewhere, either free, purchased, or came bundled with a 30-day trial with another product we bought. So you're asking people to go back to something that most people left. And maybe you get this generation to move into Paint, the upcoming generation. Hey, look what Paint can do. But I think the older generation has moved on. I get what Microsoft's trying to do, capitalize on any Copilot investment you possibly can. But for the older generation, you might be a little late.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, it's interesting to find out or find the reasoning for, again, these particular old school apps, so to speak. I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not a coder. I know that Notepad can be used fairly effectively when you're coding. So maybe there are coders who are utilizing this more often than I think. Paint is great. I'm glad they're adding a lot of features to it, especially as you see the price of Adobe go up and the difficulty learning curve for DaVinci Resolve is kind of steep for some people. It's interesting to have these kind of features. I don't know who's using these apps in particular. I was more wondering when they're going to start bringing perhaps some of these AI features or machine learning, as I like to call them more often than not, to things like the video, like the media player.
Mm-hmm.
that Photos app, like I said, hey, there's still some stuff that needs to be fixed with Outlook, but I know they're currently working on that. But there are still a handful of things in the user interface in Windows that could also use some refreshing. And it seems like these three continue to get, the benefit of Copilot, and hopefully they won't be the last three. So I'll leave it at that. We're going to move on to our next topic, which is Xbox free play days. What do you got for us in the way of that?
Well, I started doing these a little different this week because I got a couple emails from a couple of readers that asked me to start putting the sales pricing in the post, which I thought was a very good idea. So
Mhm.
it kind of, that's kind of what led me to put this in the podcast every week. We don't necessarily talk about free play days every week, but I wanted to bring up this week we have three titles. We have Bassmaster Fishing for the fishing folks out there. We have Warhammer 40,000 Inquisitor Ultimate Edition, and watch me try to pronounce this, folks.
Here we
We
go.
have I'm gonna call it Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance. How close am I? Somebody tell me.
Hey, better than I would have
So,
done.
well, I tried it. You should have seen me trying to type that out when we put this post up. That was also interesting. And something I wanted to bring up here about free play days, they usually start. This is something weird I've noticed. Microsoft does it week to week. They usually start at 12:01, which is Friday morning, but what they're going to be doesn't always come out until Friday. I've noticed that from week to week on the Xbox Wire. They say these games are available at 12:01 on Thursday, Pacific Standard Time, and they usually last until Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. But you're missing a few hours there because they don't always hit the Xbox Wire for everybody to know about it until Friday morning. So make sure you're checking out your perks in your account about your free play days. That's where you can find those. And while I'm here, I'll go ahead and give you the pricing for these. There's some pretty good deals if you like some of these. Bassmaster Fishing is $7.99. Warhammer 40,000 Inquisitor Ultimate Edition is $12.49, and I missed Thief Simulator, so don't know why
1999.
we. Yeah, that one is $19.99, and we have. I'll say it one more time. The Shin Magma Tensei 5 Vengeance is $41.99. So some
Mhm.
pretty good deals there if you like those. Pretty good variety. I haven't played any of those myself, but I will probably find one this weekend and try it out. I was just in a mood yesterday when I typed this up. I just want to see what theft simulator just might be. How do you simulate a theft? You either do or you don't.
Yeah, I wonder if it's going to be something like an Ocean's 11 where you get to like plot and map out a heist of some sort, or again, who knows if they're going to like maybe they assign you some way to steal something and you have to abide by that, or it'd be even cool if it was like a free flowing kind of Hitman esque kind of situation.
Yeah, and I
I
tell
look,
you, I tell you what would be cool. I was, while we were talking about AI, these fishing games like Bassmaster. A lot of people laugh at those because they're almost like the fishing game that you had when you were kids that went around in circles and you had the little stick with the ball on the end and you tried to, drop the ball in the fish's mouth and pull the fish out of the. You remember that toy? Did your kids have one?
yeah,
You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
It was always predictable. So why not put AI in some of these fishing games and kind of make them a little more realistic? Maybe that there's an opening there.
I figured we were talking about it, so it only makes sense if we were to, let's see. Can I pull this up?
We did talk.
There we go. Here we go.
Oh,
So for those who are listening, this is some live stuff we're doing right now. We were watching the trailer for Thief Simulator currently,
okay.
and it looks very much like Hitman. I mean, you have a bald white
It
guy with
does.
gloves on. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe you can change your character or whatnot, but he's breaking into a house and there's people in it. There looks like there's ways to disarm your security system. You can swipe at things to grab them. You can pick locks. It looks like sneak into back doors. This is it's a free roaming sandbox in the neighborhood. So it looks like you could also get caught if neighbors see you. So yeah, I mean, you can tilt and look around brick walls, and apparently break into windows using like the window cutter, and you have a crowbar. Now, I'm hoping this is only stealing, but the crowbar, who knows if you might need to use that in a bit of a panic or whatnot to get out of a house. But anyway, it looks like there's several ways to kind of steal cars, break into stuff, hotwire things, and then
we're
you get
we're training criminals.
Yeah, you're definitely doing that. So, I mean, it looks fun. It definitely does look fun. And there's apparently a what is this called? Thief Simulator 2 already out. So this is the old one that's out for I think $19.99, and you could probably help train and ramp up for Thief Simulator 2, where I'm assuming the sandbox gets even more detailed and more interesting. So anyway, I thought we'd just add that instead of running our mouths about what we don't know. We have the internet while we do this podcast, and so again, if you're interested in maybe a more technical version of Grand Theft Auto, you might be interested in this thing. So give it a look this weekend.
We'll try that one out.
Yeah. Less fun stuff. We're talking about the EU calling out Apple and Google for their slow walking of meeting the DMA. For those of you who have been living under a rock, I believe the DMA was introduced. What it stands for is the Digital Markets Act. This is something that the European Commission sought to put in place to basically wrangle in Google and Apple and their stores, essentially, in the way that they practice the Play Store and the App Store. And so since they put it in, they've told, Google and Apple to basically abide by these standards for fair practices, essentially, which, should make things more competitive for smaller companies that also host app stores or access to software and services via mobile consolidated areas. And apparently, Apple and Google said, we'll do it, but we'll do it in our way and we'll get around to it. I mean, we're sort of kind of half-assed to doing what you're asking us to, but we'd really like to just kind of keep doing what we're currently doing. And so now the EU kind of came out and said, hey, you guys have until this date to actually meet these requirements. More specifically, the way this is going to work is that the Financial Times is highlighting how these tech companies basically have been slow to adopt the DMA despite its clear intent to level the playing field. The EU's approach is a little refreshing to see that they're actually asking them, Apple and Google to, hey, abide by these, where we don't necessarily get it here in the US. But let me make sure I get all the DMA rules right for you guys. Let's see, EU DMA rules and regulations. Just so that you guys are in the know. They consider, again, Apple and Google gatekeepers. So again, and Microsoft, I guess, to a certain extent as well, because it also has a store, so to speak. But the DMA entered into, which was, I believe, November 22nd, and it started being applicable May 2nd, 2023. It allows third parties to interoperate with the gatekeeper's own services in certain specific situations. Again, allowing more people to work with the App Store, the Play Store, Microsoft Store. It allows their business users to access the data that they generate in their use of the gatekeepers platform. So again, people don't have to link off to certain things like Spotify was having to do or Netflix was having to do in order to escape the 30% that Apple and Google and Microsoft take from developers. Provides companies advertising on their platform with the tools and information necessary for advertisers and publishers to carry out their own independent verifications of their advertisements hosted by the gatekeeper, meaning I can run ads on this thing, and the same sort of ads that I run, I can run outside of this, and there's no stipulations on me only having to run ads in their store that these companies benefit from, i.e. Google, Apple, Microsoft, and others. And it allows their businesses users to promote their offer and conclude contracts with their customers outside the gatekeeper's platform. Again, trying to bypass that 30% that we know these companies love to feast off of. So basically, the EU gave Apple, Microsoft, or mostly Apple and Google, the next few months in order to comply by this. So, what are your thoughts on the EU stepping up, especially? And I wrote this mostly in light of what we might see as far as the U.S.'s differential treatment to tech companies in this upcoming administration.
I'm thinking of how I want to say this without sounding uneducated here. We've all got to behave. That's a simplistic answer. But I think with the climate that we're in, the EU, I feel like the EU gets up every day. They have 3 missions: Google, Apple, and Microsoft. That's what they pay attention to. It's like they check their email. They're like, okay, let's see what Google's doing today. Let's see what Apple's doing today. Let's see what Microsoft is doing today. And, let's see what we can say about it, what we can threaten, what we can release, and what we can get started. But at the same time, I don't necessarily completely fault them for everything they're attempting to do. I think we're in a climate where everybody wants fair play, where everybody wants an opportunity. And I think, as you said, the EU has looked to Google and Apple and Microsoft as the gatekeepers of this. So if your parents, for example, tell you don't drink and they're sitting there holding a beer in front of you, it kind of doesn't enforce the fact of don't drink. So I kind of get what the EU is trying to do. I think people are tired of hearing about it, to be honest. And I think there's a lot of wishing of both sides. There's one side that says the EU just needs to leave it alone. But then there's the other side that says, yes, it needs to be fair. And I think we're always going to go back and forth on these a little bit because everybody's, if you're not, that's not competition. That's not competition. And part of competition between these companies is pushing the envelope. And that's what they're going to do. And, it's kind of like your parents. They're going to tap you on the wrist and go, don't do that. Okay, you're not going to do that for a day or two, a week, a month. But eventually, you're going to try it again and see if you can take that extra step. So the EU is kind of being like the parent of the situation now. How does this behave in the U.S.? Well, we're under new leadership here in the U.S. And to be honest, political opinions aside, we don't know yet what is going to happen here in the U.S., how these things are going to be treated. It's not something our administration has tackled yet and said, look, this is what we want. So the EU's kind of just, okay, this is what we want over here, and, we would like you to go along with it. And Apple and Google are like, well, maybe. You told us to get a 32-ounce drink, but we got 2 32-ounce drinks instead. It's okay. We're not mad, but we want you to behave.
Yeah, I'm torn on this.
I am too.
The idea is that with monopolies comes convenience, but lack of choice. The lack of choice is the crux of the convenience. The idea that you can go in, I think about it now, and I'm going to try and dumb this down as much as I can. And I don't mean this as a pejorative, but as a way to make an analogy. You go into your carrier now, and at least here in the US. In Europe and Asian markets, it's still relatively the same. It's unfortunate here in the US, but you go in there and you go to like a T-Mobile, AT&T, whatever. They have two big sections, which is Apple and Samsung. They used to have, and then off in the corner with the broken lights and the broken display and probably cardboard cutouts versus real actual devices, there might be a Pixel somewhere. But that's your three main things. There used to be a time, and not too long ago, where they'd have the two big ones still, Samsung and Apple, but they'd have, a fourth and a fifth and a sixth and a seventh option of HTC, LG, Motorola, some other companies, and they all had their own variations of phones and operating system. And people could go in with choice and say, hey, you know what? I don't want the iPhone. I don't want the long contract. Here's this Motorola for $50. It gets me most of what I can get from the Samsung one, which again would also needs a contract and some other things, but I can get this one. Because of convenience and a monopoly, so to speak, all of that feature and all of those R&D and all that stuff is sucked out of Motorola. Motorola is now just a part of Google now. If I were to put a pin on this analogy, Google bought Motorola, turned it into the Pixel now. And so now you've lost one company, but it's been easier for people to kind of say, all right, well, my choices have been made for me. And I think this is what the EU is trying to fight against. And it becomes even more clear, especially in more recent times, when if you need to make a choice for whatever reason, be it financial, religious, political, convenience, it's becoming harder and harder for people to do that because of the way things are structured here in the US. But in Europe, again, if you wanted to get a Huawei phone, if you wanted to get some other type of phone, you could do that. But here in the US, you can't necessarily do that. And because the market's been boxed out and we've kind of gotten used to, okay, there's always just the big two. Same thing for stores. There's Walmart and Target for a lot of people. There's, Coke and Pepsi. There's, usually we kind of boil things down to two options, and it's because of the way we've consolidated stuff. I'm hoping, and who knows what this administration does. I know that the last administration had, and we talked a lot about Lena Khan and the FTC, they were trying to get to a spot where we could move somewhere closer to the EU, where we have more competition, where people have more choice. It becomes less convenient and more annoying for users to have to kind of figure out things and work through things and decide through the choices they want. But, if and when they need to make that choice, it's good to know that they have it. Who knows what this administration does? They might back more monopolies. They might go after these big tech companies for different reasons and inadvertently give us more choice. But the idea that the EU sticks with this, I think, is still necessary. And I'm hoping that they continue, and maybe they'll be an example for us going forward. We'll get on to our next story, though, which will be this. I think you have a leak, right? This is the thing you're writing about?
I do, and I want to say something real quick. I hope everybody can see me. My personal,
I think it froze, but it's fine.
Okay, it went to a white screen in the box where I'm supposed to be, and I really don't want to start and restart the webcam because it may just completely disconnect me. So you guys may just have to listen to me for the next few minutes. But
doesn't make for a bad pod.
It might be better than looking at me. Some of you might, some of you might prefer that. But speaking of looking at things, we have a pretty good leak today. And this leak really, for those that follow us week to week, you know that I love to game. Gaming is what I love to do. And I love to game on all kinds of devices. And I have been kind of a stickler on the fact that it's been many months since we have heard about the supposed Xbox gaming store. Well, I want to give complete credit to The Verge here. This was something they broke first, and we may have seen a leak from Microsoft as to maybe some idea as to what this gaming store may be, what the Xbox app may turn out to be, and what we may see later. We know there is supposed to be some type of Steam handheld coming from Lenovo later this year. We have heard there could be some others from Asus. And we've always wondered, well, how does Microsoft integrate into this? Because if you remember back at CES when these things were announced, Microsoft was up on stage with Lenovo and Steam and really didn't say a whole lot. But according to a screenshot that The Verge got a hold of, that I'm sure my buddy has on the screen for you folks to see,
Yep.
looks kind of interesting there, doesn't it? Looks kind of like a game launcher. Looks like, we've got some handhelds there in the photo. We're talking about being able to have thousands of choices in the little marketing demo. So, could this be a hint as to what we're getting ready to see?
Well, I even have
Microsoft
up right
and
now
Xbox?
the actual
Okay,
screenshot that The Verge has, which is basically
okay,
the Xbox UI, and then it has the sections for filtering. So it's
and the
filter
Steam arrow there. Okay, I see
exactly.
that.
So we have our install own Game Pass steamed as a collection that you can probably, I'm assuming, integrate. So hopefully the idea is that you don't even need to, beyond connecting the accounts, you don't need to repurchase any of the games that you have on Steam. You'll be able to instantly click that button and have your library of Steam games available through the Xbox UI. So again, you won't necessarily have to perhaps download Steam itself. Now, I know a lot of these times, or at least the ones I've been using, they prefer you to download their app, but you won't necessarily have to jump back and forth between their dedicated app, which again might use more resources than necessary on a Windows device, and Xbox. You might be able to just do it all through the Xbox app, which would be great if they can fix the Xbox app and going forward in these handhelds. I think as you were hinting towards, if this is the idea that you don't need SteamOS, you can just use Xbox and get your Steam games through here. This would be big for Microsoft.
Is this how Microsoft fixes the Windows on handheld problem?
It's definitely a big step towards it. Yeah, I would agree.
That's really what crossed my mind, is because we know the Xbox, by Microsoft's own admission, is basically running Windows in a virtualization Hyper-V style atmosphere. So could they do something here with the Xbox app as a launcher on a handheld and say, look, everything you need is in the launcher? Now, I understand they would have to make some of the settings more launcher friendly, because you really don't want to be going back to Windows control panel or some kind of, something to operate your display resolutions, etc. Or do we just, I'm forward thinking here, do we get handhelds to a point where the default resolution is X, the default frame rate and fidelity settings are X? Everything you want to do will play here, kind of like we do streaming. If it streams, you have a device, it'll play it. So do handhelds get to the point where they launch something that looks like this? You can access everything. The default settings are 1080p, 60 FPS. I'm just giving you an example. And if you want to tweak those, you go over here. That would make these devices more accessible to the average person that wants to pick them up. Because I've got a couple people in my family that want handhelds.
Yeah, I think
they can't do they can't do that configuration, point. They want it to be like the Game Boy. That's what I'm trying to say. They want it to be like the old Game Boy was, or the Switch. You just turn it on, you play. And I think this might be Microsoft's way of getting there.
If I had to guess, and again, this is me not being in the know for as far as Windows development's going, but I'm hoping that they are treating this Xbox app the same way that they treat the Windows settings, where this is your front end to all of the intricacies that are the Windows UI, the Windows settings, the Windows preferences and stuff, and that they will slowly incorporate the ones, at least that are gaming related, into this, so that you are never really bounced out of this experience. Now, it's going to take time, and it's going to be a pain in the butt to have to go through the different UIs and stuff like that as you get bounced off to more esoteric settings and preferences that are used for gaming, and your VSync and stuff like that. But ideally, they're going to put this out here, Xbox app, and they're going to slowly start putting all of the the sections that they need to, as far that are concerned with gaming, resolution, sound, graphics cards, all that kind of stuff, and put those in the Xbox app. There'll be little icons that you'll be able to go into, click on that, and they'll be touch friendly, bigger responses areas, things like that, keyboard and mouse configured or controller configured in order to get in and out of those. And that'll be the idea over time, is to just start bringing those features in while they work on this thing. So you'll, again, maybe in the next couple of years, you'll go there and you'll see like, oh, they've added my ability to change how I want the graphics drivers to, how much VRAM I want to be used in specific games, whatever, in this UI. But until I can, until it's fully incorporated, sometimes I get bounced out of it and the UI is a little different. Now I find myself in Windows and I'm like, whoa, what's going on? I have to get back to the app. But over time, it'll eventually just be there. It'll be some side of bar where I can like go there and do that. But that's neither here nor there. The idea that Steam could be coming up pretty soon, and I want to know if they're going to save this for like another gaming event where they announce this. Is this going to be something that happens this year? Because I mean, it's rare that they would have marketing like this and not follow up on it. So I'm hoping it's soon for them.
Yeah, I mean, we've not seen the Steam handheld yet from Lenovo. We know it's coming. We've not seen it released yet.
Yeah.
And something you bring up here, Steam is doing this to some degree. Steam is doing this, which is what's made the Steam handheld successful, which is kind of what started all this. The
Yes.
Steam handheld, I think, with its software and, to your point, the way it interacts with the settings, you turn it on, you're presented with a more simplistic UI that the average person can adjust, that is certainly tweaking settings on the back end of the operating system to get you the experience you're looking for. And if Steam can do it, Microsoft can do it. And I think once we get there, we can seriously start talking about play on any device. I want a handheld instead of a console. And that's a whole other ball game that, Microsoft has to tackle at that point.
Agreed. We'll move on to our last two topics, which is Gemini getting an upgrade. And you probably scratch your head like, yeah, this is a Microsoft pod. Why are you talking about that? I bring it just as a way of adding context to Copilot and AI in general. But, if you are a fan of tech in general, you're probably keeping an eye on this by yourself already. What we got added was two new features. One feature called Canvas. It's a similar feature to other AI chatbots, but basically it's an interactive space for creating, refining, and sharing documents and coding-based work. It's available as a new button in the Gemini prompt bar, and it lets people kind of collaborate on projects with other people. The feature is rolling out globally. I think it rolled out earlier this week. And I think it supports all the current languages. I think it's 13 right now for Gemini, and it's in the Gemini app. We're also getting audio overview, which is based on Notebook LM, which will essentially podcast whatever you've text up or have written up. And you can do it, as granular as, we use our podcast show notes, or if you're in a meeting and you're taking the minutes, this will turn that experience into a podcast that is basically hosted by a single person or two people, which makes it a little easier for people to, interact with. So imagine if, you were in a meeting, tons of notes, things that you may or may not have been paying attention. Maybe you were tired and slept through half of it. To get back and read those notes might be boring, but if you were working, you could then run this audio overview and have it run as a podcast that you're listening to as you do other work. And I think that's kind of a cool, unique, new way to kind of interact with data and content, essentially. What are your thoughts on Google advancing their AI with these two new features that are, again, currently available? I take that back. Audio overview is coming soon with additional languages, but I think it's currently available, so you can play it. You can play around with it right now. What are your thoughts on them adding those, and then what we see from Copilot, which is not much.
like we mentioned before we went live here, the key to AI is keeping it moving, keeping it refreshed, showing people more options of what they can do with it. And I think it's just making your models better, making them more capable. And then Gemini has kind of jumped out here and says, look at all we can do. And they continue to add features like these audio overviews. People will use that. I will. I would absolutely use that. But to your point, what is Copilot doing? Yes, I did see something this week that Copilot was being added to OneDrive. That's great. You can search my files. You can tell me what's in there. But what I'm noticing with Microsoft is everything is about search. It's about looking something up, displaying a result. Look something up, display a result. Generate an image. Well, we've been generating images since we talked about this AI discussion 3 years ago now. Generating images was one of the first big things we did. It feels like Google is making things more interactive. That's the word I'm looking for. More interactive, something I can take a show note, turn it into a pod, listen to it. That's usable. Podcasting, as we know with what we do, podcasting is the big thing now. A lot of people are doing that. Show notes are popular. A lot of people can listen to their show notes and see ways to make their podcast better. We can do the same thing. But come on, Microsoft. You did give us Deep Think, a month ago now, a month and a half ago?
Yeah, it feels like it.
You kind of just plastered it out there and says, oh, you got Deep Think and we can recall things. Well, Gemini had been recalling things before you. So where are we with AI is what I want to know. Because I just got a new S25 Ultra. Gemini is on the right-hand side, the action button. Hold down the button, Gemini launches. Google said, I'm not going to say it, that Hey You Know Who would be replaced with Gemini later this year. Well, I got Copilot on my Windows box. I got Gemini on my phone. They used to be very similar. Now I'm finding myself preferring the Gemini features on my phone. That's a problem for Microsoft. They've at least got to stay step for step with features until AI takes off. Whatever feature it is that somebody throws in there where millions of people say, I have to have that feature. We've got to stay close together. Because if Google gets that feature first, Microsoft will do what they've always done with Google Chrome versus Edge. They'll always be throwing that ball uphill. And they'll always be chasing, their slice of the pie. And they'll get their 10th or their 25%, and that'll be all they'll get, because once Google finds it, they're just going to keep advancing it. It's like, chasing a rope. They're going to let you get a little closer, they'll pull it away. Let you get a little closer, they'll pull it away. And then you get into these, well, can we license yours? Kind of like we did with Edge and Chromium and all that good stuff. Come on, Microsoft, get it together.
Well, that dovetails into our next and last topic, which is Microsoft teaming up with Musk, BlackRock, and MGX for $30 billion data center.
Probably good you can't see my facial reaction.
Fair enough, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. I sent this over to David earlier this week, like a day and a half ago, and I think my message essentially was saying, I don't like this. Now, this was a knee-jerk reaction. I've had some time to sit back and think about it, and I still don't like it. But it is at least spurred some conversation to be had. What we're basically talking about here is Microsoft partnered with, I think its latest ventures, partnered with specifically the UAE's based MGX and XAI, aside from BlackRock as well. The idea is to basically create a new AI infrastructure partnership that will allow uh, Microsoft access to XAI as well as whatever MGX is using for their AI uh, efforts. The coalition is has raised 10 billion so far for of their $30 billion aspirational uh, data center project target. The group will rebrand as the AI Infrastructure Partnership (AIP) and focus on infrastructure investments, particularly in the U.S., with some funds allocated to partner countries. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink has highlighted the clients like highlighted clients like pension funds and insurers are eager to invest in such a long-term infrastructure project. Now, this isn't. I mentioned that off the top AI because that's our main focus as far as consumers, but most of this seems looks like it's going to be building out data centers. This would be good for XAI because I think currently they have one of the largest ones, but it's the way that it uses turbines and the amount of electricity it's drawing from the local area has been a bit of a controversy for them. So they're going to need to spread out some of this, and with the help of Microsoft, already touched down on a bunch of other infrastructure projects. They can kind of leech off of that and kind of expand. What's in it for BlackRock, I'm not necessarily certain on. But as far as Microsoft getting into bed with Elon Musk and his XAI, which I think has recently noted that it has 100 billion users or something like that, close to what Meta's kind of put up. Again, its total user base as far as Twitter is concerned is 350 something million, I think, at any point in time. Uh, I want to know. I'm asking you, what are your
Okay.
thoughts on Microsoft partnering with, and this is again the more controversial part, with XAI and Musk, not because of its political implications, but because they are also investing in OpenAI, which are very staunch competitors of XAI and Gronk and whatnot. What are your thoughts on Microsoft kind of playing in both fields?
You know, I think about what we used to think about as teenagers. What happened when you had two girlfriends or two boyfriends at the same time? Didn't last very long, did it? Somebody got caught. Somebody got mad. You know, there was
Yeah, you're right.
always, there.
But you weren't the prolific cheater in high school.
No, I was not. Uh, there was always somebody that got upset. All jokes aside, and I see that happening here. You can't keep throwing. Since we're talking about data centers, I'm going to use a building as the example. You can't keep throwing these AI companies in the same building and saying, look, we've got a spoon in your building and we've got a spoon in your building and we've got a spoon in your building, and expect everybody to continue to play along. Now, there's the political side of it where people can, have their opinion of Elon, and that's fine. I'm looking at it from the simple point of AI. You can't keep saying, well, can we mooch off yours? Can we mooch off yours? Can we mooch off yours? All you got to do is upset one. And that whole apple cart, all these investments, the money spent is gone. Or I don't want to say maybe gone is too strong of a term, but it's at least, harmed, damaged. The relationship isn't there. Then you end up in court. Then you end up, the EU gets to talk about you some more. Then you get the FTC involved. They want to talk about you some more. So I feel like I don't understand why, and maybe you do. I don't understand why this group of companies need each other and need to upset their existing apple carts. I don't understand the why.
Yeah, I don't understand the why either, but I'm also, historically not a great business person. So I'm going to leave that to them. My questions do arise, though, is this an indicator? And I know that for legal purposes, in order to keep the E off their back and to keep, at the time, Lena Khan from shuffling around in their business, Microsoft sought to have a bit of plausible deniability between itself and OpenAI. And this may be the manifestation of, agreements talked about at that time, saying, hey, you know what?
Could
We're
be.
going to depend less on them, and to show everyone that we are independent. We are not looking to be a monopoly in AI. We're going to bring in our competitors. We're just going to be the house of AI. Like, if you have AI and you need help expanding, come to Microsoft, and because we got data centers all over the place. We're touching new ground in new places all the time. You can leverage Azure, and we can leverage AI, and we'll do it for everyone evenly or equally. That could have been the conversations, the discussions that are being had. My more cynical take is that Microsoft has reached a point in AI development that they're looking to be in every pot simultaneously in preparation for the next pivot. When a company has a model that changes the game, that shifts the narrative of AI, that moves in a direction, Microsoft wants to be there, because it seems like, and again, this is my limited knowledge of the industry at large. Google knows kind of where it wants to go with this roadmap and development plans. It's releasing features relatively consistently, and it's just been toiling away at these things. Now, it did recently get a partnership. I forget which company or not. That is its first biggest AI investment, but that's for more security purposes than it is AI models. This is a way to shore up security and user privacy when using AI models. I think that's their partnership. That Wiz, I think it was the company. It isn't like Microsoft, who is just teaming up with partners to get different models in order, like I said, to make sure that they're ahead, or they're at least in the conversation game if and when that pivot happens. And that's where I'm a little nervous about as far as this partnership is concerned. Is that Microsoft is expanding itself, saying like, all right, well, if X AI takes off or Grok happens to be, people prefer, we'll have our foot in that. And or if OpenAI comes up with something, we'll have our foot in that. Or if another company has a model that we want to leverage, we'll have our foot in that, because we don't know what the next thing is. We're not developing towards that. Now we're not working towards that. So that's my cynical take. But I'll let you explain that, and then we'll let people go. We'll get on with our weekend.
And I agree with you. To having your foot in the door in what you think is successful is a good thing. Having a lot of feet and a lot of doors just ends up getting the door closed on your foot and your ankle broke. I mean,
And
you
Microsoft
know,
broke its whole leg with Windows Phone.
exactly. And I feel like, and this kind of piggybacks off our last story, because where's Microsoft's innovation with Google, with Copilot compared to Gemini? Are they showing us that, okay, we've spent we have, I'm not going to say they've made their investors mad, but maybe their investors have said, look, this is the budget.
Mm-hmm.
We tried this. And, they say, look, all right, we're going to go use this money. We're going to stick our foot in all these doors. And the first one to make the big move that we think is going to bite, we will jump in. But in the meantime, we're not putting out features as quick for Copilot. To your point, they're not sure.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know. And I don't think anybody knows. But I don't think the fact that people don't know is the reason to stop innovating. That's when the whole thing stops. That's when you see a 45 mile an hour car, it's now a 35 mile an hour car, it's now a 25 mile an hour car, it's now a 15 mile an hour car. Oops, AI went as far as it's going to go and it didn't make it. Let's go do something else, whatever that else is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see that. I think we've got a ways to go to get there. But I agree with you. It bothers me that Microsoft is showing signs of not progressing with Copilot and sticking their foot in other people's doors, waiting for them to do the work. That never works.
Not long term. with that being said, we're gonna let everyone kind of go about their weekend. We're gonna wrap this up. Let people know what you're doing, what games you're playing, what things you're looking forward to for this weekend.
Well, this weekend for me is NCAA basketball. For those that like
Mm,
March Madness, I am a March Madness fan. Matter of fact, when we get done here, I'm gonna go flip a device on and have that playing for the rest of the day, probably the rest of the weekend. So I'll be doing some of that. Probably going to just pick up some easy games this weekend. May pick up, Thief that we mentioned in the free play story from the Xbox store, and check that out this weekend after you showed the video there. That looked a little interesting. May go check that out. If I feel like diving too deep into something, I may dive back into some Delta Force, but I don't know. It's also my sister's birthday this weekend, so that's going to take up a little time. So between basketball, a few minutes of gaming, and birthday, that may be all we get. How about yourself? What are you doing? I know you were busy with the kids last weekend, if I remember, and you went camping the weekend before. So what are you doing this weekend?
Still busy with the girls. My wife is away on a business trip, so it'll just be in them. But I have my in-laws, their grandparents in town to help out. So I am actually going to be investing in NBA 2K25, playing a little
Ooh,
bit. I know that they have a way to play the NCAA roster, so I can make my own version of the tournament if and when I don't like that my bracket has been exploded, which I think it actually happened yesterday. So I can go for the wins that I thought were going to happen and make them happen in this video game reality. So I'll be playing that a little bit, and then doing the normal dad kid stuff of watching. I think we're actually going to try and make a trip to go see Snow White, the new Snow White movie as well. So get out and go, give theater a quick minute. So NBA 2K25 and the NCAA rosters and Snow White this weekend for me.
you give me an idea there. I forgot that the NCAA rosters are in NBA 2K25. I picked up 2K25 back on the Black Friday offering when it was like $12 or something.
Yep.
I forgot about that.
So I'm going to play around with that. But if people want to play against you or if they want to chat with you about stuff this weekend, how can they reach you?
Well, if they want to play against me, it won't be a very hard challenge. I'm a gamer at heart with a lot of these. I never said I was leading any leaderboards anywhere. So, but
Good disclosure.
if you want to say hi or you want to come play, David PAJ 1978. That's on Blue Sky. I have been a little under the weather at the beginning of this week, so I've not been as active, but I'll get in there and chat with some of you folks if some of you want to drop by. And again, I'm sorry for whatever happened to our um, setup here, that my camera went out. My camera's still on. I just have a white box. So I'm not sure what happened there, but you will get to see my lovely face again next week. And I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend.
Yeah, if you want to reach me, you can reach me at Happy Hulk on Blue Sky. That's where I'm doing most of my social media activities. Yeah, just head for me there, and I'll be talking about, again, per usual, comics, politics, and gaming. And if not, then you can reach us in our comment sections on each of the articles that David and I write at our website, microsoftunboxed.com, or in the comment section on this YouTube video. So with that being said, you guys all have a great weekend. We love that you guys give us your time, and we hope you give us some more next week. Have a good weekend.
Have a good week.
From PowerPoint to Teams, we call